Perhaps at this very moment, as your eyes quietly look up at the night sky, you are thinking that you have seen it all. A faint band of light like silver smoke stretching across the sky. A few familiar constellations, a few planets brighter than the other stars, and behind them, a night sky that seems entirely empty. But the strange thing is, the sky that humans have been gazing at for tens of thousands of years has only revealed a tiny slice of the galactic home in which we live. We usually look up horizontally. That is where the Milky Way stretches out like a river of light, where billions of stars are crowded together, where brilliant nebulae lie, giant dust clouds, regions where new stars are born. Every famous telescope, every spectacular photograph, every story about the center of the Milky Way, almost all of them point toward that bright ring, just like residents living forever in a valley who have never thought of climbing to the top of the mountain to see the whole world. Yet tonight will be different. Tonight we will not follow the familiar path. We will leave that river full of stars. We will look up in a direction that very few people have ever taken the time to observe. Straight up or straight down. Two directions that are almost pitch black. Two voids that seem to contain nothing. Two places that sometimes even sky lovers unconsciously overlook. If the Milky Way is compared to a giant disk of light, then most people only look at that disk from the edge. Few are curious about what lies above the disk's surface, and even fewer wonder what quietly exists below. In fact, those are not two different places, nor are they heaven and the abyss. In space, the concepts of up or down do not exist in the way we are used to thinking on Earth. There is no floor. There is no ceiling. There is no absolute direction. There are only conventions set by astronomers to help us easily visualize. When they say above the galactic plane, it simply means the direction perpendicular to the disk where hundreds of billions of stars revolve around the galactic center. If you were standing on the other side of the galaxy, perhaps that concept would also be reversed. This might sound strange, but it is also beautiful, because even the concepts that seem most certain, like up and down, are just perspectives. Perhaps life is the same. There are things that make us worry today, but if viewed from a sufficient distance, they are just like a small ripple on a vast lake. There are sorrows that seem heavy, but from the perspective of billions of cosmic years, they are as light as a speck of dust floating in the morning sunbeam. Pay attention to your breath. Don't try to inhale too deeply. Don't try to control it. Just let the breath come and go like tiny waves. Meanwhile, imagine that the chair you are sitting on begins to feel lighter. Not because gravity has disappeared, but because the thoughts in your head are gradually dissolving like thin mist under the sun. You don't need to do anything at all. No need to memorize. No need to study by heart. No need to try to understand everything. Just let the story gently carry you away. If a few astronomical details happen to drift by and you miss them, that is completely fine. The universe is never in a hurry. Stars do not rise faster just because we are impatient. Galaxies do not rotate faster just because humans are busy. Everything happens according to its own rhythm. And tonight, you can also allow yourself to slow down. Imagine that the Earth is gradually shrinking below. Not with a violent rocket launch. No engine sound. No shaking. Just a very gentle lifting, like a leaf carried off the lake's surface by the night wind. The city below is still bright. The streets are still there. The flow of traffic continues to move. Somewhere, someone has just finished a day of work. Somewhere, a baby has just fallen asleep. Somewhere, an astronomer is still patiently waiting for their telescope to complete an hours-long exposure. All of those things are still happening, but the distance is causing all sounds to soften. The car horns disappear first, then the sound of the wind, then the sound of the rain. Finally, only a gentle silence remains. That is the silence that space has preserved for nearly 14 billion years. The silence is not scary at all. On the contrary, it is like an invisible blanket embracing every planet, every star, and every galaxy. From here you can see the moon, a silver-gray sphere with countless impact craters. It does not emit its own light. What we see is only reflected sunlight. Even that gentle beauty is a gift borrowed from elsewhere. Perhaps humans are the same. We often think we must always shine using our own strength, but sometimes what makes a person warm is precisely the light they receive from others. A word of encouragement, a hug, a beautiful memory, a book, or simply a quiet night like this. Further away is the sun. From this distance, it is no longer the intense heat source that makes summer afternoons sultry. It is just a pale yellow star, one of the hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way. Not the biggest, not the brightest, not the most special, but special to us, because around it is a small planet named Earth. And on that planet, there are creatures who know how to look up at the sky. Perhaps that is the real miracle. Not that the universe is so vast, but that amidst that vastness, there exist eyes that can recognize its beauty. In the following chapters, we will leave this familiar region. We will begin a slow climb out of the thin disk of the Milky Way. We will encounter stars that are billions of years older than the sun, ancient globular clusters that still silently orbit the galaxy since before the Earth was even formed. Stellar streams that are the remnants of small galaxies once devoured. Giant bubbles of energy rising above and below the galactic center. And further still, an invisible halo of dark matter, quietly keeping the entire galaxy from flying apart. But tonight, we don't need to go that fast yet. Every long journey begins with a very small step. And the first step is always learning how to look up in a different direction. If, after this journey, you wish to continue exploring the deep mysteries of the universe, ancient civilizations that have vanished, and the greatest questions of human existence, remember Epoch Echoes, a place for souls always curious about the beauty of time and space. Just like tonight's journey, every story there is told slowly, so that you can not only understand more about the universe, but also have an opportunity to listen to yourself. But for now, do not rush to look in any direction. Just stay a little longer in this silence, because before learning how to fly among the stars, we need to learn how to listen to the stillness of the sky. That is where every true journey begins. There is something deeply fascinating about every journey. The hardest part is not the long road ahead. It is the very first moment when we decide to leave the place we have grown familiar with. A young bird only needs to leave its branch once to know how vast the sky truly is. A boat only needs to leave the harbor once to understand that the ocean has no end. And tonight, we are going to take a journey even quieter than that. No engines roaring, no flames bursting from the bottom of a rocket, no countdown, no cheers from thousands of people on the ground. We are simply becoming lighter. If you like, imagine your body resting on a small raft in the middle of a calm lake. The water is completely rippleless, the air is cool. So many stars reflect on the water's surface that you can no longer tell. Where the sky ends and the lake begins, then, very slowly, the raft begins to lift off the water, not because anyone is pulling it up, but because the lake itself is receding. Everything happens so gently that you barely even notice. That is exactly how we will leave the Earth. No rush, no force, leaving nothing behind, simply widening our perspective. From a height of a few hundred meters, rooftops already begin to shrink. Roads intertwine like thin threads. The traffic that once made the city so noisy is now just tiny, moving specks of light. If you keep going higher, you will realize something strange. No more borders, no more lines on maps, no country names, no fences that humanity has spent thousands of years building. From above, the Earth has never known those divisions. It is just a blue planet quietly spinning in the void. Two oceans connect to one another. Mountain ranges stretch on, without stopping at checkpoints. Clouds do not care which city lies beneath them. Perhaps nature always sees the world as a whole. It is only humans who often divide it into small parts. Rising even higher, the atmosphere begins to appear like a pale blue ribbon hugging the planet. Standing on the ground, we often think of the sky as infinite. But from this distance, you will see that the atmosphere is actually very thin, astonishingly thin. If the Earth were the size of an apple, the layer of air sustaining every forest, every ocean and every human being would only be as thin as the apple's skin. The entire history of humanity, all the laughter, the tears, the music, the love stories, the wars, the dreams, they all took place within that fragile layer of air, a transparent blanket woven by nature over billions of years. When realizing this, many astronauts have said they could never look at Earth the same way again. They no longer saw separate nations. They only saw a shared home there. Here's a term for that feeling. It is called the overview effect. It is the moment when distance brings the human heart closer, when we understand just how precious this tiny planet is. By now, we have passed through most of the atmosphere. The sky is no longer blue. It gradually shifts to deep indigo, then purple, and finally, a profound deep black. That is not the darkness of night. It is the true color of the universe. On the ground, sunlight is scattered by air molecules, creating the blue sky we are familiar with. But in outer space, that layer of air is gone. There is only light and empty space. Many people have imagined space as a cold and terrifying place. But if you could truly stand here, your first feeling would probably not be fear. It would be wonder. Because before your eyes is a black so pure, it has never appeared anywhere on Earth. It is not the color of night, nor the color of a cave. It is the color of an almost absolute void. And on that black canvas, the stars appear clearer than ever. They no longer twinkle, they no longer flicker. They are no longer distorted by the atmosphere. Each star is like a tiny diamond set upon an endless velvet backdrop. They shine with the very light that has traveled for years, hundreds of years, or even thousands of light years, to reach your eyes. The light you are seeing right now may have left its star before the first pyramids appeared on Earth. Some rays are older than human civilization itself. This means that every time we look up at the sky, we are not just looking into space. We are looking into time. The further we look, the further we look into the past. That is one of the most beautiful wonders of astronomy. The universe does not tell its story with words, it tells it with light. And light always carries memories. Take a little more time to look at the Earth behind you. That blue planet is now like a glowing jewel amidst the deep black void. From here, massive storms look like soft, white swirls. Continents blend in shades of green, brown, and yellow. Like a painting brushed with giant strokes. Not a single sound can reach where we are standing, because in a vacuum, sound cannot travel. If you could open your imaginary helmet, you would hear no wind. You would not hear the sun burning. You would not hear the earth spinning. There is only an almost absolute silence, a silence that is not lonely at all, but rather like a vast library of the universe, where every story is kept within the light of the stars, waiting for the day someone is patient enough to listen. And tonight, we will be those listeners. But these are only the very first steps. There is still a long journey ahead, far off in front of us. The glowing band of the Milky Way still quietly spans the sky like an ancient road. In the previous chapter, we decided we would not travel along that road. Instead, we will climb up, straight up, away from the plane of the galaxy, to a place where very few stars remain, to a place where the darkness begins to tell stories older than light itself. And it is from this very moment that our ladder of light truly begins. If your eyes are still turned toward Earth, perhaps it is time to gently turn around, not because our home planet is no longer beautiful, but because before us lies a view that is vastly more immense. The Milky Way still stretches out like a river of light from the ground. It looks merely like a silver-white blur. But from our vantage point right now, that feeling has changed. You no longer see the sky as a dome arching over you. You are inside it, like a fish swimming in the ocean, realizing for the very first time that it has never lived beneath a ceiling. Every star ahead is in motion. Of course, you will not see this movement with the naked eye. A human lifetime is too short. The stars, on the other hand, are too patient. They spend millions of years completing a single orbit around the galactic center. If human time is like a single heartbeat, then galactic time is like the breath of an entire mountain. So slow it seems almost motionless, but that does not mean they are standing still. Where the sun resides, every star participates in a colossal cosmic dance. They orbit the center of the galaxy at a speed of over 200 kilometers per second. That number is hard to grasp. With each passing second, our solar system has traveled further than the length of hundreds of football fields. Yet because everything moves together, we rarely notice. It is just like sitting on a very smooth train. If you do not look out the window, you would think you are standing still. Life is sometimes like that. Too, there are changes happening day by day. So small we fail to notice them, until one day we look back, only to realize we have come a very long way. The ladder of light continues to carry us higher. Below, the dust and gas of the galaxy begin to thin out. The light changes. Too, near the galactic plane, massive clouds of dust absorb and scatter starlight, making the band of light appear as soft as a silk ribbon. But the further we move away from that plane, the veil of dust gradually lifts. Space becomes clearer. The stars appear sharper, like a door made of mist, quietly opening before your eyes. Imagine standing in the middle of a very dense forest. The canopy hides most of the sky. Light only filters down in tiny streaks. Then you slowly walk up a hill. With each step, another piece of the sky appears. Finally, when you reach the summit, the entire vast sky opens up in absolute silence. That is exactly the feeling we are experiencing. Space has not changed, only our perspective is widening. Ahead, a few stars burn with a brilliant blue. Color? They are young stars. Colossal dot blazing. Hot, they burn through their fuel so quickly that they only live for a few million years. That might sound like a long time, But to the universe, it is just a flash of lightning. A little further away are the gentle yellow stars. One of them is our sun, not too big, not too small, not too bright, but stable enough to nurture life for billions of years. Perhaps endurance is always more precious than a brief, brilliant flash. Then you will encounter the orange and red stars. They are older, more serene. Their light is not blinding. Instead, it brings a sense of warmth, like a campfire on a winter night. If stars could tell stories, perhaps the old ones would be the best storytellers, because they have witnessed so much. They have seen gas clouds collapse to give birth to new generations of stars. They have witnessed supernova explosions that burned brighter than an entire galaxy. They have quietly orbited the center of the Milky Way through countless cycles, back when life on Earth had not even had time to emerge. There is something beautiful in astronomy. The light from each star carries not just energy, it carries history. When a ray of light touches your eye, it is not a greeting from the present. It is a letter sent from the past. Some letters take 4 years to arrive. Some take 400 years, some take tens of thousands of years, and we, who look up at the sky, are patiently reading every single one of those letters. In that silence, you can feel the ladder of light continuing to lift us. No sound of footsteps, no creaking of wood. This ladder is made of imagination, of curiosity, and of the thirst for knowledge that has followed humanity for thousands of years. Each step is a question. Each answer opens up a new step. Perhaps that is why science has never stripped the universe of its magic. On the contrary, the more we understand, the more we realize how much we have yet to know. If one day you wish to continue this journey, not just through the stars, but also through ancient civilizations, the mysteries of the pyramids, and the grand questions about human origins, remember Epoch Echoes. It is a place for those who believe that knowledge is not just to be memorized, but to be felt with curiosity and humility. Ahead, the glowing band of the Milky Way seems to be thinning out bit by bit. We are very close to the edge of the thin disk, where the sun still silently completes its orbit that takes over 200 million years around the galactic center. Just a little further, we will enter an older region of space, less light, less dust, but holding the oldest memories of the galaxy. And there, the ladder of light will lead us to meet stars that were already old before the Earth ever uttered its first greeting to the universe. There are places in the vast universe so immense that it takes humanity centuries just to realize we are living inside them. The Milky Way is one of those places. For most of history, our ancestors only knew the night sky as a star-studded dome. They saw a faint band of light stretching across the sky and called it by many different names. Some civilizations saw it as a river of the gods. Others believed it was the path guiding souls back to eternity. There were also those who told tales of it being a bridge connecting the human world to things beyond imagination. Each story carried its own unique beauty. The wonder of it is, science does not destroy that beauty. It only expands it. Today, we know that this band of light is not a river. It is the light of hundreds of billions of stars blending together from an unimaginable distance. And the sun, the star that has warmed the Earth for billions of years, is merely one of them. But what is even more fascinating is our position. We are not near the galactic center, nor are we at the edge. The sun is quietly moving in a region known as the thin disk. That is our Home, not a home made of bricks and stone, not a nation, not a planet, but a vast expanse of the galaxy where young stars, gas clouds, and cosmic dust coexist in a balance that has lasted for billions of years. If you could look at the Milky Way from far away, you would see it resembles a colossal disk spinning slowly in the dark. That disk is not thick. In fact, it is astonishingly thin. If the entire galaxy were as wide as a massive stadium, the thin disk where we live would be like a sheet of paper laid flat across the empty space. Yet, it is within this very thin layer that most of the galaxy's stories unfold. New stars are born, planets gradually form, giant molecular clouds silently collapse under the pull of gravity. Somewhere, a star is blazing to life for the first time. Elsewhere, an old star is preparing to close its journey with a brilliant explosion. The life of the galaxy never stops moving. It is just that everything happens too slowly compared to a human lifespan. Imagine we are drifting through a thin mist. Tiny dust particles glint under the light of countless stars. This is not dust like the kind on a bookshelf or by the roadside. These are microscopic particles of matter, made of carbon, silicon, oxygen, iron, and many other elements. Some of these dust grains were once born in the hearts of stars that died billions of years ago. After those stars ended their lives in supernova explosions, they returned their matter to space. From those fragments, new generations of stars were born. New planets gradually took shape, and finally, in a very small corner of the galaxy, the Earth appeared. This means that every single atom in our bodies has a history older than any civilization. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen in every breath, all were once forged inside the cores of ancient stars. Humans often say that we are born from the dust of the Earth. Astronomy tells a story that is even more beautiful, that we are born from stardust. Perhaps that is why every time we look up at the sky, we feel a sense of familiarity, even though we have never set foot there. The ladder of light continues to lift us up very slowly. Below, the thin disk appears like a gentle sea of light. It is not chaotic at all as it seems from the inside. From this distance, all movements blend together into a song without words. The sun is still traveling at a speed of over 200 kilometers per second around the galactic center. Yet, to complete a single orbit, it needs more than 200 million years. This means that since the last dinosaurs disappeared from the Earth, the sun has not yet completed a full revolution. Around the Milky Way, galactic time is so different from our own. A life is just like a blink of an eye. But that does not make life small. On the contrary, precisely because it is brief, every single moment becomes all the more precious. Perhaps that is also what the universe is silently teaching us. You do not need to live for a very long time to be meaningful. Just shine in your own way, much like how each star in this thin disk is still quietly contributing to the beauty of the entire galaxy. Ahead, the light begins to thin out. The familiar dust clouds are no longer as dense as they were at the start of our journey. That is the sign that we are approaching the boundary of the thin disk. Further beyond lies a quieter region of space, home to ancient stars that have lived through most of the Milky Way's history. We will meet them in the next chapter. The silent travelers of time. The witnesses who have watched the galaxy grow through tens of billions of light years of memory, and as you step into that space, you will realize that the further you move away from the familiar, the quieter the universe becomes, not because there are fewer stories to tell, but because each story is already old enough that it no longer needs to be spoken too loudly. There is a moment in every journey when the scenery begins to change, not suddenly, not loudly, but like the sky, shifting from blue to purple as twilight descends. You do not notice exactly when it happens, only when you look back do you realize that the world behind you has become different. We are in that moment now. The ladder of light continues to carry us away from the thin disk of the Milky Way. The light grows softer. The dense bands of dust that once embraced the star-forming regions have now fallen behind. The brilliant nebulae become fewer as well. Space grows clearer, quieter, like stepping out of a dense forest onto a high hill where the wind carries the scent of time instead of the fragrance of young leaves. Ahead of us lies a region of space that astronomers call the thick disk. If the thin disk is where the galaxy is still writing new chapters, then the thick disk is like an ancient library. There, every star is a book that has remained open for billions of years, not because they shine more brightly, but because they have witnessed more. The stars here are astonishingly old. Many of them were born 10, 11, or even 12 billion years ago. At that time, the sun did not yet exist. Earth had not yet formed. The blue oceans were still only a possibility of the future. Even the elements that make up our bodies were still wandering through primordial clouds of gas. If every star is a witness, then the inhabitants of the thick disk have observed nearly the entire youth of the Milky Way. Imagine entering a square where everyone has lived for hundreds of years. They do not speak much. They are not in a hurry. Their eyes carry a serenity that only time can create. The thick disk is much the same. There are fewer young blue stars here, fewer brilliant explosions, fewer clouds of gas swirling to give birth to new generations. Instead, there are stars of pale yellow, soft orange, and gentle red. Their light is not dazzling, but enduring like a lamp still, burning in the home of an old storyteller. You may wonder why this place is called the thick disk. The name does not mean that matter is denser here. In fact, the stars in the thick disk are much more sparsely distributed than those in the thin disk. The difference lies in the way they move. Young stars in the thin disk usually orbit the center of the Milky Way along paths that are nearly flat, like leaves drifting across the surface of a calm lake. But the stars of the thick disk are different. Their orbits rise upward, then descend again. They continuously oscillate through the plane of the galaxy. If you could trace their paths over hundreds of millions of years, you would see enormous ribbons weaving through the void. No stars collide. There is no chaos, only a dance lasting billions of years, guided by the gravity of the entire galaxy. It is strange to think that chaos and order are sometimes separated only by the distance from which we observe. From very close, everything appears random, but from far enough away, beautiful patterns emerge. Human lives are much the same. There are periods that seem full of turbulence, yet years later, when we look back, we realize that every turning point helped bring us to where we stand today. Perhaps the universe has always loved telling stories like that, stories whose meaning appears only when we are patient enough. In that silence, we continue forward. The sky around us grows darker, but this is not an absence. It is a space reserved for the oldest lights. Here, Every star is like an ancient clock. None of them emits a ticking sound, yet together they quietly measure the passage of galactic time. Some of these stars have completed dozens of revolutions around the center of the Milky Way. Meanwhile, our Sun has made only about 20 since the day it was born. That makes the Sun seem like a young resident in a city of elders, and Earth younger still. If the history of the Milky Way were compressed into a single year, human civilization would appear only in the final seconds before midnight on New Year's Eve. But that does not make us insignificant, quite the opposite. Because we arrived later, we have the opportunity to listen to the story that the universe has patiently told for billions of years. Perhaps that is the greatest gift of astronomy. It does not make humanity feel meaningless. It reminds us that we are part of a much larger story, a story that began with primordial clouds of hydrogen, passed through countless generations of stars, through supernova explosions, through the formation of planets, and ultimately led to the moment when a human being looked up at the night sky with curiosity. The seedy ladder of light still has many steps ahead. The thick disk is only the first doorway into the ancient regions of the galaxy. Far beyond lies a realm of space even quieter still, a place where stars are no longer gathered into familiar bands of light, a place where they are scattered into a vast halo surrounding the entire Milky Way. It is the land of the oldest memories, place where time seems to flow more slowly than light within our imagination. And there, in the next chapter, we will meet the silent guardians of galactic history, the inhabitants of the stellar halo, where every point of starlight carries a story from the dawn of the universe. There is a moment in every journey when the scenery begins to change, not suddenly, not loudly, but like the sky, shifting from blue to purple as twilight descends. You do not notice exactly when it happens. Only when you look back do you realize that the world behind you has become different. Or in that moment now, the ladder of light continues to carry us away from the thin disk of the Milky Way. The light grows softer. The dense bands of dust that once embraced the star-forming regions have now fallen behind. The brilliant nebulae become fewer as well. Space grows clearer, quieter, like stepping out of a dense forest onto a high hill, where the wind carries the scent of time instead of the fragrance of young leaves. Ahead of us lies a region of space that astronomers call the thick disk. If the thin disk is where the galaxy is still writing new chapters, then the thick disk is like an ancient library. There, every star is a book that has remained open for billions of years, not because they shine more brightly, but because they have witnessed more. The stars here are astonishingly old. Many of them were born 10, 11, or even 12 billion years ago. At that time, the Sun did not yet exist. Earth had not yet formed. The blue oceans were still only a possibility of the future. Even the elements that make up our bodies were still wandering through primordial clouds of gas. If every star is a witness, then the inhabitants of the thick disk have observed nearly the entire youth of the Milky Way. Imagine entering a square where everyone has lived for hundreds of years. They do not speak much. They are not in a hurry. Their eyes carry a serenity that only time can create. The thick disk is much the same. There are fewer young blue stars here, fewer brilliant explosions, fewer clouds of gas swirling to give birth to new generations. Instead, there are stars of pale yellow, soft orange, and gentle red. Their light is not dazzling, but enduring like a lamp still. burning in the home of an old storyteller. You may wonder why this place is called the thick disk. The name does not mean that matter is denser here. In fact, the stars in the thick disk are much more sparsely distributed than those in the thin disk. The difference lies in the way they move. Young stars in the thin disk usually orbit the center of the Milky Way along paths that are nearly flat, like leaves drifting across the surface of a calm lake. But the stars of the thick disk are different. Their orbits rise upward, then descend again. They continuously oscillate through the plane of the galaxy. If you could trace their paths over hundreds of millions of years, you would see enormous ribbons weaving through the void. No stars collide. There is no chaos, only a dance lasting billions of years, guided by the gravity of the entire galaxy. It is strange to think that chaos and order are sometimes separated only by the distance from which we observe. From very close, everything appears random, but from far enough away, beautiful patterns emerge. Human lives are much the same. There are periods that seem full of turbulence, yet years later, when we look back, we realize that every turning point helped bring us to where we stand today. Perhaps the universe has always loved telling stories like that, stories whose meaning appears only when we are patient enough. In that silence, we continue forward. The sky around us grows darker, but this is not an absence. It is a space reserved for the oldest lights. Here, every star is like an ancient clock. None of them emits a ticking sound, yet together they quietly measure the passage of galactic time. Some of these stars have completed dozens of revolutions around the center of the Milky Way. Meanwhile, our sun has made only about 20 since the day it was born. That makes the sun seem like a young resident in a city of elders, and Earth younger. Still, if the history of the Milky Way were compressed into a single year, human civilization would appear only in the final seconds before midnight on New Year's Eve. But that does not make us insignificant. Quite the opposite. Because we arrived later, we have the opportunity to listen to the story that the universe has patiently told for billions of years. Perhaps that is the greatest gift of astronomy. It does not make humanity feel meaningless. It reminds us that we are part of a much larger story, a story that began with primordial clouds of hydrogen, passed through countless generations of stars, through supernova explosions, through the formation of planets, and ultimately led to the moment when a human being looked up at the night sky with curiosity. The ladder of light still has many steps ahead. The thick disk is only the first doorway into the ancient regions of the galaxy. Far beyond lies a realm of space even quieter still, a place where stars are no longer gathered into familiar bands of light, a place where they are scattered into a vast halo surrounding the entire Milky Way. It is the land of the oldest memories, place where time seems to flow more slowly than light within our imagination. And there, in the next chapter, we will meet the silent guardians of galactic history, the inhabitants of the stellar halo, where every point of starlight carries a story from the dawn of the universe. There are places in the universe that were not built from stone, not raised by hands, nor do they bear any trace of civilization. And yet from a distance you may still feel as though you are approaching an ancient city, a city with no streets, no gates, no towers, a city built entirely from light. The ladder of light continues to carry us farther away from the disk of the Milky Way. Behind us, the familiar glowing band has become little more than a thin ribbon of silver stretched across the void. Ahead, in the deep darkness of the stellar halo, rounded points of light begin to emerge more clearly. At first glance, they resemble tiny droplets of dew resting upon the black velvet of the cosmos. But the closer we move, the more we realize that each luminous speck is a world unto itself. Not a single star, but hundreds of thousands, even millions of stars gathered together in an almost perfectly spherical form. These are globular clusters, the oldest inhabitants of the Milky Way. If the galaxy were a vast nation, then globular clusters would be the cities that have existed since the dawn of its history. While other regions of the Milky Way continue to change, giving birth to new stars and later sending them off in brilliant explosions, these places seem to preserve the slower rhythm of billions of years ago. Imagine yourself floating before a gigantic crystal sphere, not transparent crystal, but crystal made from countless tiny points of light. Each point is a sun. Each sun may possess planets of its own, and together they orbit the center of the cluster in a dance that has remained nearly unchanged for more than 10 billion years. There is no music, no conductor, only gravity, patient and enduring, keeping every star bound together across spans of time longer than anything humanity has ever witnessed. What makes astronomers love globular clusters is not only their beauty, it is also their age. Most of the Milky Way's globular clusters formed when the galaxy itself was still young. Some appeared 12 to 13 billion years ago. In other words, when they first began to shine, the sun had not yet been born. Earth had no oceans. Many of the galaxies surrounding us today were still in the process of growing. If time could settle into the rings of an ancient tree, then globular clusters would be the oldest trunks in the forest called the Milky Way. Let us move a little closer. The distances between stars begin to shrink. The light becomes denser. At the center of a globular cluster, the stellar density is so high that the sky of a hypothetical planet would look completely different from the sky of Earth. If you stood on a world near the cluster's core, true darkness might never exist. Thousands of suns would share the sky at once. Some would shine as brightly as a full moon. Others might appear even more brilliant than the sun seen from Earth. Shadows would overlap one another. Night would survive only as tiny pauses between countless sources of light. It is a curious thought. We often associate peace with an open sky full of emptiness. Yet here, beauty emerges from togetherness. Hundreds of thousands of stars live side by side and almost never collide. Although the distances between them are far smaller than those in the sun's neighborhood, the universe remains vast enough for each star to follow its own path. It is like an enormous choir. Every voice is different, yet all blend into the same song. Have you noticed that throughout this journey, we have repeatedly encountered different forms of balance? The thin disk balances gas, dust, and young stars. The thick disk balances itself through inclined orbits. The stellar halo finds balance in its sparsity, and globular clusters achieve balance through extraordinary density and perfect order. Perhaps nature has never truly loved chaos. It simply expresses order in many different ways. Scientists have observed more than 150 globular clusters orbiting the Milky Way. Each carries its own story. Some travel along nearly circular paths. Others plunge close to the galactic center before sweeping far outward and returning once more. Some may be original residents of the Milky Way. Others may be visitors from smaller galaxies that were captured and merged long ago. This means that when we gaze upon a globular cluster, we are not always looking only at the history of our own galaxy. Sometimes we are also seeing the remnants of galaxies that no longer exist. The universe does not like to erase the past. Instead, it preserves it in remarkably subtle forms. A stream of stars stretched across space, a solitary globular cluster, a chemical element hidden within the light of a star. All of them are surviving fragments of stories that unfolded billions of years ago. If you listen with your imagination, this place may feel like an ancient town square at dawn. There are no footsteps, no bells, only gentle light flowing across the stars like the first rays of morning touching stones that have endured for many millennia. You and I remain only passing visitors. We need bring nothing with us except curiosity. For sometimes the greatest gift the universe offers humanity is not answers. It is the feeling of standing before something greater than ourselves. When we recognize how small we are, we also learn to cherish every brief moment we have. The ladder of light has not yet reached its end. Leaving behind these crystal cities, we will continue deeper into the Milky Way's halo. Far in the distance, two faint clouds of light drift like islands upon a dark ocean. At first, they seem to be little more than pale smudges. But in truth, they are entire small galaxies accompanying the Milky Way on a journey that has lasted billions of years. In the next chapter, we will visit the galaxy's closest companions, the quiet satellite galaxies that circle the vast home we call the Milky Way. There are encounters that do not happen in a single day. They do not last for a few years, nor are they measured in centuries. In the universe, some friendships are measured in billions of years. The Milky Way has companions like that. After leaving behind the crystal cities of the globular clusters, the ladder of light continues to carry us through the quiet expanse of the stellar halo. The sky now feels wider than ever. Stars no longer appear in dense bands. Instead, they are scattered like grains of silver dust across an endless sheet of black silk. It is within this silence that two faint patches of light begin to emerge in the distance ahead. At first glance, they resemble small clouds floating in the darkness. There are no clear spiral patterns, no brilliant galactic arms, only two gentle glows, like the softest breath of the sky. Had our ancestors lived in the southern hemisphere, they would have been familiar with these lights for thousands of years. On moonless nights, they stand out against the heavens like two lonely islands in an ocean of stars. Today we know them as the Large Magellanic Cloud and the Small Magellanic Cloud. Their names come from the expedition that recorded them during the first circumnavigation of the globe in the 16th century. But these small galaxies existed long before humanity became aware of them. They are not merely patches of light. Each one is a galaxy, a world of its own, a home to billions of stars. If Earth makes us feel small before the Sun, if the Sun humbles us before the Milky Way, then these galaxies remind us that even a giant galaxy like the Milky Way is not alone. It has companions, it has loyal satellites, it has relationships that have endured longer than the entire age of the solar system. Let us move a little closer. The distance between us and the Large Magellanic Cloud is still hundreds of thousands of light years, a distance almost impossible to imagine. Yet on the scale of galaxies, it is a remarkably close handshake. The Large Magellanic Cloud does not stand still. Neither does the Milky Way. The two galaxies continuously influence one another through the invisible force of gravity. There is no rope connecting them, no bridge of matter, only gravity, quietly pulling, holding, and shaping their paths across billions of years. Sometimes nature does not need physical contact to create a bond. Simply existing, simply remaining patient, can be enough to change one another in subtle ways. Astronomers believe that satellite galaxies like these have passed near the Milky Way many times. Each close encounter stirs the giant clouds of gas within the thin disk. Those clouds become compressed, and from them, new generations of stars are born. This means that somewhere in the story of our galaxy, these small neighbors may have helped create some of the stars we see today. Perhaps even the sun carries part of that story within itself. In daily life, we often believe that only great forces create great changes. But the universe tells a different story. A much smaller galaxy can still leave its mark upon a giant one. A gentle pull, repeated over millions of years, can eventually reshape a structure spanning hundreds of thousands of light years. Time is always an ally of persistence. If you look more closely, you will notice faint streams of light surrounding these satellite galaxies. They are not spiral arms. They are streams of stars and gas stretched out by gravity, like delicate ribbons drifting in the wind. They are evidence that no encounter in the universe leaves no trace. Whenever two galaxies pass near one another, they exchange a portion of matter, a portion of momentum, a portion of history, not through words but through motion. You can imagine the entire local group, the galactic neighborhood in which the Milky Way resides, as an immensely slow dance. Galaxies do not stand in neat rows, nor do they orbit one another in perfect circles. Instead, they move together in a symphony lasting billions of years, sometimes drawing near, sometimes drifting apart, sometimes merging to become something larger. The universe never stops changing, yet that change unfolds so slowly that, to us, it resembles stillness. Perhaps that is what makes space so remarkable. It teaches us that movement is not always the same as haste. The most enduring things often move forward very slowly, like a tree growing day by day, like a river patiently smoothing stone, like the Milky Way itself, quietly completing its orbit around its center. As the ladder of light continues to lift us higher, the two satellite galaxies gradually recede behind us. They remain there, small, quiet, yet never truly alone. And the same is true of our Milky Way. Ahead, in even deeper darkness, thin streaks of light begin to appear like streams of silver. They are not the arms of a galaxy, not globular clusters, but the remnants of smaller galaxies that were once embraced by the Milky Way and gradually absorbed into its very structure. These are stellar streams, rivers of light that flow not with water, but with the memories of billions of stars. In the next chapter, we will follow these rivers and listen to the story of how galaxies grow, not only by giving birth to new stars, but also by welcoming travelers from across the universe. Perhaps when you hear the word river, you think of water, of waves shimmering beneath the sun, of gentle currents murmuring over stones, of streams forever seeking the sea. But here, where we now find ourselves, rivers are made of something else. Not water, not ice, not gas, but light, the light of millions of stars, quietly linked together into long, winding bands that curve around the Milky Way. From this distance, They resemble silver brushstrokes lightly painted across a dark and endless sky. Delicate, peaceful, almost transparent. If you did not know what you were looking for, you might pass right by them without noticing. Yet these fragile ribbons of light are among the oldest chronicles of our galaxy. They are not written in ink, not carved into stone, nor stored in any library. They are written in the orbits of stars. Imagine a small dwarf galaxy slowly drifting toward the Milky Way for the first hundreds of millions of years. Nothing seems unusual. It keeps its shape. Its stars continue orbiting its center, like a small fleet of boats entering a vast sea. But the closer it comes, the more the immense gravity of the Milky Way begins to make itself known, not through sound, but through invisible touches. On the side closer to the Milky Way, gravity pulls a little more strongly. On the far side, a little less strongly. The difference is tiny, so small that if you observed it for only a few years, you would see nothing happen at all. But the universe has never worked according to the clocks of human beings. It has millions of years, then hundreds of millions, and over such immense spans of time, tiny differences become profound changes. The dwarf galaxy begins to stretch, not because it is weak, but because its companion is so vast. One by one, stars near its edges leave their old home. They do not explode, they do not vanish. They simply drift onto new paths like leaves leaving a branch on a day, when the wind is barely noticeable. Star at a time, then another, over millions of years. Those stars form a luminous stream stretching across tens of thousands of light years. That is a stellar stream. Seen through the eyes of a poet, it might be called a river of light. Seen through the eyes of a historian, it might be called a diary. And seen through the eyes of an astronomer, it becomes the trace of encounters that took place long before humanity ever learned to look up at the sky. There is something beautiful about the way nature preserves memory. Human beings preserve the past through photographs, through journals, through music, or through stories passed from one generation to another. The universe preserves memory as well, but instead of paper and ink, it uses orbits. Each stellar stream is a letter that was never erased, a message telling us that a small galaxy once passed this way, that there was once a home for billions of stars, and that even though its original form is gone, its story continues to live within the body of the Milky Way. The ladder of light carries us alongside one of these streams. The stars within it are no longer as close together as they once were. The distances between them continue to grow, yet all of them still move in the same direction, like travelers walking along a very long road, separated by great distances, yet still remembering the same homeland. Have you ever wondered what gives a place its identity? Its walls? Its roads? Or the memories of the people who once lived there? Perhaps galaxies are much the same. When a dwarf galaxy merges into the Milky Way, it does not disappear completely. Part of its matter continues the journey. Some of its stars still carry their unique chemical signatures. Part of its orbital history remains preserved, and in that way, the past continues to exist within the present. We carry our own stellar streams as, well, not across the sky, but within memory, the lessons taught by our parents, a book that once changed how we saw life, a friend who passed through long ago yet still left traces within our hearts. Not every encounter lasts forever, but every encounter leaves an orbit, Perhaps that is one way in which humanity and the universe are more alike than we. Imagine ahead of us, the stellar stream begins to curve gently, not because an invisible hand is pulling, but because the entire galaxy is quietly shaping the path of every star. There is no hurry, no forceful command, only gravity, patiently carrying out its work for more than 13 billion years. If you watch long enough, you begin to notice something remarkable. This stream does not merely tell the story of a small galaxy's end. It also tells the story of a larger galaxy's growth, for the Milky Way did not become vast solely through the stars born within. It grew by welcoming travelers, by extending the reach of its gravity, by turning encounters into part of its own history. Perhaps growing up is much the same, not remaining exactly who we were yesterday, but learning to embrace new experiences until little by little they become part of who we are. The ladder of light continues to carry us higher. Behind us, the stellar streams gradually fade into the darkness, but they do not truly disappear. They simply become part of a larger picture, just as cherished memories may no longer appear before us every day, yet still quietly shape who we are. Far ahead, two enormous structures of light begin to emerge. They do not shine like stars. They do not sparkle like globular clusters. They resemble two colossal mountains, sculpted from invisible energy, rising symmetrically above and below the center of the Milky Way. In the next chapter, we will approach these extraordinary formations, the giant structures known in modern astronomy as the Fermi bubbles, relics of a turbulent era, deep within the heart of our galaxy. There are traces in the universe that were not created by stars. They do not sparkle. They do not emit the gentle light that human eyes can see. If you simply looked up at the sky on a clear night, you would never know they were there, yet, much like the ocean currents that flow silently beneath the sea, there are immense structures that reveal themselves only when we learn to observe with different eyes. The ladder of light continues to carry us farther away from the ancient rivers of stars. Behind us, the thin bands of light gradually fade into the darkness of the galactic halo. Ahead, space appears empty, silent, bottomless, and completely still. Yet in science, silence is sometimes only a sign that we are listening with the wrong senses. Human beings perceive the world through visible light. It is only a tiny portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, the narrow range our eyes evolved to detect. Through it, we see the blue of the oceans, the golden fields, the crimson glow of sunset. But the universe does not speak only in those colors. It also whispers through radio waves, through infrared light, through ultraviolet radiation, through X-rays, and through gamma rays, which carry the most powerful energies in the universe. If our eyes could see the sky in gamma rays, the view before us would be completely different. Directly above and below the center of the Milky Way would appear two enormous symmetrical structures, like the outstretched wings of an ancient creature suspended in space. They extend roughly 25,000 light-years in each direction, a distance so vast that if placed on a map of our galaxy, each bubble would rise to nearly half the diameter of the entire Milky Way disk. It is astonishing that a structure so enormous was discovered by humanity only at the beginning of the 21st century. Not because it was small, but because it was almost invisible. In 2010, while astronomers were analyzing data from the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope, they noticed something unusual against The gamma-ray sky appeared two gigantic regions of emission whose shapes were almost perfectly symmetrical. One lay above, one lay below the galactic center, neither significantly offset, neither distorted, as though someone had blown two colossal bubbles of energy straight from the heart of the Milky Way. Since then, they have been known as the Fermi bubbles. The name sounds simple, but the story behind it opened an entirely new chapter in our understanding of our galaxy. Imagine standing before an ancient tree that has lived for thousands of years. Its trunk is calm, its canopy is lush and green. Nothing about it suggests that it once endured violent storms. Yet, when you examine the growth rings inside the wood, you discover that during one particular year, the tree grew at an extraordinary rate. Something had happened. An event had left a mark that could never be erased. The Fermi bubbles are much like those growth rings. They are the lingering memory of a time when the center of the Milky Way was far from quiet. At the heart of our galaxy lies a supermassive black hole known as Sagittarius A. Today, it is remarkably calm. It consumes only a tiny amount of matter and emits far less energy than the actively feeding black holes found in many other galaxies. If you looked only at the present, you might assume that this region had always been peaceful, but the Fermi bubbles seem to tell a different story. They suggest that millions of years ago, the heart of the Milky Way may have awakened. Perhaps an enormous amount of gas and dust fell into the black hole. Perhaps new stars formed at a furious pace around the galactic center. Or perhaps both events occurred together. Although scientists are still investigating the exact cause, the outcome appears unmistakable. An immense burst of energy erupted from the center of the galaxy and not in every direction, but primarily along an axis perpendicular to the plane of the Milky Way. That energy surged into space, pushing hot gas and highly energetic particles both upward and downward, creating the two nearly symmetrical structures that we continue to observe today. The remarkable thing is that from our present vantage point, these bubbles do not feel violent. They do not resemble an explosion. They resemble two mountains made of invisible, light, quiet, balanced standing, guard on either side of the galaxy, as though they had been there since the beginning. Perhaps time has softened every disturbance. A storm on Earth eventually passes. Even the largest waves ultimately return to a calm sea. Even the most violent events in the universe, if given enough time, become part of its tranquility. There is something deeply comforting about that thought. Not because every hardship is small, but because time always knows how to smooth even the sharpest edges. The universe has never forgotten its great upheavals, yet neither has it allowed them to remain forever as wounds. Instead, it transforms them into history, into structure, into beauty. The ladder of light continues to carry us closer. The two immense bubbles now fill nearly our entire field of view. They are no longer distant patches of light. They resemble two invisible oceans suspended in space. And in the next stage of our journey, we will step inside those oceans to discover what truly fills them, and why the echoes of an event that occurred millions of years ago still resonate throughout our galaxy to this very day. Perhaps when you hear the word waterfall, you think of water. Water flowing from mountaintops into valleys, tiny droplets joining together to form streams, streams merging into rivers, and eventually every river finding its way to the sea. The universe has cycles like these as well. The difference is that there is no water here, no clouds, no rain like the kind we know on Earth. Instead, there is hot gas, plasma, and countless atoms quietly undertaking a journey that lasts tens of millions of years. The ladder of light carries us beyond the edge of the Fermi bubbles. Behind us, the two immense structures remain suspended in silence, like the invisible sails of the Milky Way. They no longer carry the violence of an ancient catastrophe. They resemble a memory polished smooth by time. Ahead of us lies a far more subtle kind of motion, harder to see, yet no less important. Astronomers call this phenomenon the galactic fountain. The name feels strangely familiar, because if you watch nature long enough, you begin to realize that the universe often repeats the same patterns we know so well. Water evaporates, it forms clouds, then it falls again as rain. Gas within a galaxy behaves in much the same way. In regions where stars are forming rapidly, young stars pour out intense radiation. Massive stars end their lives in spectacular supernova explosions. Each explosion releases an enormous amount of energy, enough to propel vast clouds of hot gas away from the plane of the Milky Way. At first, the gas moves incredibly fast, like steam rising from the surface of a lake beneath the morning sun. That hot gas carries carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, and many other elements forged by generations of stars over billions of years. Not all of it escapes the galaxy. Most of it simply rises to great heights. Then it gradually slows. The Milky Way's gravity is endlessly patient. It does not pull harshly. It does not hurry. It simply calls the gas home. After millions of years, the gas begins to cool. Its atoms move more slowly. They gather into enormous clouds. Then quietly, they drift back toward the galactic plane. Not as raindrops, but as invisible rivers of matter. A rainfall that lasts for millions of years. A cycle that never truly ends. Perhaps the greatest beauty of the galactic fountain is not its immense scale, but what it represents. No matter is ever truly lost. The atoms that once belonged to a dead star may become part of a cloud of gas. That cloud may one day give birth to a new star. Around that new star, planets slowly begin to form. And on one of those worlds, perhaps life begins all over again. If you listen carefully enough, you may recognize a familiar story. It is the story of continuity, not endings, not separation, but transformation. A leaf falls to the ground. It becomes nourishment for the roots of a tree. The tree grows. It blossoms once more. It bears fruit again. Life on Earth has always been sustained by cycles like these. The Milky Way is no different. Nothing exists forever in a single form. Yet nothing truly disappears. Things simply exchange their roles, their shapes, the places where they belong. The ladder of light continues to carry us alongside a stream of gas that is slowly returning to the galactic plane. From this distance, it resembles a ribbon of silver floating through space, soft, gentle, peaceful. If you did not know it was hot interstellar gas, you might think you were looking at morning mist drifting through a quiet valley. It is a remarkable thought. At every scale of the universe, from tiny planets to galaxies stretching across hundreds of thousands of light years, nature seems to favor cycles. Day and night, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, birth and old age, formation and dissolution. Everything moves according to its own quiet rhythm. Perhaps that is why peace is not the absence of movement. Peace is simply being where you belong within a movement far greater than yourself. Human beings sometimes fear change because life never stands still. But from the perspective of a galaxy, change is not something to fear. Change is how the universe continues to create. Every cycle carries the possibility of something new. Every ending quietly prepares the way for another beginning. If one day you find yourself in the midst of change, remember the galactic fountain. The hot gas does not struggle against gravity, nor does it rush to return. It simply completes its journey at the right time, at the right rhythm. Perhaps our own lives can be just as gentle. Sometimes what we need is not to force everything to happen more quickly, but simply to keep moving forward one small step at a time. Like atoms that patiently traveled for millions of years before one day becoming part of a new star. Amid that stillness, we suddenly realize something. Even though we have traveled far above the plane of the Milky Way, we have never truly left its embrace. Gravity is still here, quietly, gently, unwavering, holding every particle of gas, every star cluster, and even us within this story. Far ahead, the darkness begins to deepen, not because there is less light, but because we are approaching one of the strangest components of our galaxy, something that emits no light, reflects no light, cannot be seen directly, yet accounts for most of the Milky Way's mass. In the next chapter, we will step into that mysterious realm, the dark matter halo, the invisible framework that has quietly embraced the entire galaxy for more than 13 billion years. Perhaps the slowest goodbyes are the ones we barely notice. A leaf letting go of its branch at the end of autumn. A river changing its course over thousands of years. A mountain worn away grain by grain beneath the patient hands of the wind. But there are also farewells so sudden that they are almost impossible to imagine. A star, larger than the sun, shining brilliantly for billions of years. Then in an instant, it is hurled away from its home at millions of kilometers per hour. No more orbit, no more family of stars, no more galaxy to circle, only a solitary journey that will continue until the very edge of the universe. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel your heartbeat begin to settle. Throughout our journey, everything has seemed to move in gentle circles. Planets orbit stars. Stars orbit the center of the Milky Way. Galaxies revolve within clusters of galaxies. The universe feels like a symphony filled with countless slow waltzes. But every now and then, a single unexpected note bursts free, a sudden movement that shatters the rhythm. That is the moment a hypervelocity star is born, a star on the run. If you stood on a planet orbiting the sun and wished to leave Earth forever, you would need to reach a speed of about 11.2 kilometers per second. To escape the solar system requires even more. To break free from the gravity of the entire Milky Way, you would need to move at a speed that is almost beyond imagination. More than 500 kilometers per second. Many hypervelocity stars travel at 700, 1,000. Some even exceed 2,000 kilometers per second. In a single second, they can travel farther than the length of an entire country, and they never slow down. What could possibly launch a star several times more massive than the sun at such astonishing speed? The answer lies in a place we visited long ago. The heart of the Milky Way. There resides Sagittarius A, a supermassive black hole. Its mass is equivalent to about 4 million suns. No one knows exactly how many stars have wandered too close to it, but every so often, a pair of binary stars orbiting one another drifts into its overwhelming gravitational grip. The black hole does not swallow them both. For instead, it performs one of the strangest gravitational tricks in the universe. One star is captured, the other is flung away like a stone launched from a cosmic slingshot. This is known as the Hill's mechanism, one of the most spectacular phenomena nature has ever created. Imagine two friends holding hands while riding a giant spinning carousel. If a gigantic hand suddenly pulls one of them toward the center, the other is thrown outward at tremendous speed. That is almost exactly what happens, except the carousel is millions of kilometers across, and the giant hand is the gravity of a black hole. These stars begin a journey with no destination. They race through the galactic disk, pass through clouds of cosmic dust, cross ancient star clusters, glide beyond rivers of stars, leave the stellar halo behind, and continue into the almost empty space between galaxies. Behind them, the Milky Way grows smaller and smaller, like the lights of a distant city fading as a ship leaves the harbor at night. The strange thing is, if one day someone were to live on a planet orbiting a hypervelocity star, their night sky would look nothing like ours. There would be no brilliant Milky Way stretching across the heavens, no crowded sea of millions of stars. The galaxy would slowly shrink into a single island of light behind them. With every passing million years, that island would grow just a little smaller, until eventually it became nothing more than a faint point of light in an endless dark ocean, a homeland that could never be reached again. People often imagine stars as motionless objects, but in truth, every star is moving. Most simply happen to share the same dance. Hypervelocity stars are different. They leave that dance behind. They never look back. They resemble the first great explorers who sailed away from an unknown continent without any idea what lay ahead. Modern telescopes have already discovered dozens of hypervelocity stars. Astronomical models suggest there may be thousands, perhaps even millions, silently crossing intergalactic space. They are too distant, too faint, too alone, yet they are there. Travelers who never stop moving. There is something profoundly beautiful about this phenomenon. These stars are not fleeing out of fear. They are simply following the laws of nature. There is no anger, no regret, no remorse, only motion. The universe does not distinguish between staying and leaving. It simply allows everything to continue its journey. Perhaps people are not so different. At various moments in life, we too are forced to leave places we once called home. A school, a city, a career, a relationship. At first, every farewell weighs heavily upon the heart. But with time, we begin to understand that those journeys are what shape the people we have become. If hypervelocity stars could tell stories, they would probably not speak about the moment they were cast out of their galaxy. They would speak of the skies that no one had ever seen before. If one day you wake up eager to continue exploring the ancient mysteries of the pyramids, the civilizations that vanished, or the deepest reaches of the cosmos, perhaps you will find a companion called Epoch Echoes. It is more than a storytelling channel. It is like a small lantern always waiting to welcome you home after each voyage among the stars. Now, imagine yourself sitting on a planet orbiting a hypervelocity star. Behind you lies the Milky Way. Ahead stretches infinite space. There are no familiar roads, no landmarks to guide your way, only silence. Yet within that silence, you discover something unexpected. Not every departure is a loss. Some journeys can begin only after we have traveled far enough to look back at where we came from. And perhaps thanks to these runaway stars, the light of the Milky Way will one day reach regions of space where no star has ever shone before. In the next chapter, we will widen our journey even further. No longer following solitary stars, we will turn our attention to the immense ocean of gas that surrounds our galaxy, a realm so diffuse that it is nearly invisible. yet one that holds the key to the Milky Way's very survival. This is the boundless sea of gas. There is an old belief that oceans belong only to planets. Earth has its blue oceans. Europa may hide one beneath its frozen crust. Titan possesses lakes of liquid methane that glisten beneath an orange sky. For centuries we imagined that seas required coastlines, waves, and gravity pulling water towards solid ground. But the universe has a different idea. Some oceans have no beaches, some seas are invisible, and one of them surrounds the very galaxy we call home. Take a slow breath. Allow your thoughts to drift as gently as starlight. Our journey has carried us beyond the bright spiral arms of the Milky Way. We have wandered through ancient globular clusters, crossed rivers of stars, watched giant bubbles rise above the galactic center, and followed lonely stars escaping forever into intergalactic darkness. Now we travel even farther, beyond the stars. Beyond the dust, beyond the visible edge of the galaxy, into a realm that appears almost empty. A place where silence seems complete, yet appearances, as the universe often reminds us, can be wonderfully deceptive. Imagine standing far above the Milky Way. From this impossible vantage point, the galaxy resembles a luminous whirlpool suspended in endless blackness. Its spiral arms shimmer softly. Clouds of glowing hydrogen weave delicate patterns between newborn stars. Dark dust lanes curl through the disk, like ink flowing across paper. It seems complete, self-contained, as though everything that belongs to the galaxy lies within its glowing boundaries. But it does not. Stretching hundreds of thousands of light years beyond those visible stars is something almost impossible to see. An immense sphere of gas, so thin that even the finest vacuum ever created on Earth would seem crowded by comparison. Yet despite its extraordinary emptiness, this vast halo contains an astonishing amount of matter. Astronomers call it the circumgalactic medium, or simply the CGM. It is the invisible sea surrounding the Milky Way. If every star were removed, if every planet vanished, if every glowing nebula disappeared, the circumgalactic medium would remain. You would not see it, but it would still embrace the galaxy like a transparent ocean surrounding an island of light. Its particles are separated by enormous distances. A single cubic meter may contain only a handful of atoms. To us, that sounds like almost nothing. But when such almost nothing fills a volume millions of trillions of times larger than our solar system, it becomes one of the galaxy's greatest reservoirs of matter. Sometimes the quietest places hold the greatest abundance. For many years, astronomers overlooked this hidden ocean. Telescopes searched for stars. They searched for planets. They searched for brilliant galaxies whose light traveled billions of years to reach us. The CGM remained almost invisible. It neither glowed brightly nor reflected much light. Only when distant quasars shone through this enormous halo did scientists begin noticing subtle fingerprints left in their light. Tiny absorption lines, faint shadows, whispers written across the spectrum. The invisible ocean had quietly revealed its presence, not by shining, but by gently touching the light that passed through it. The circumgalactic medium is not calm. Although it appears motionless from afar, it is constantly flowing. Gas rises from the galaxy. Gas falls back toward it. Some of it has been heated to millions of degrees. Some of it cools slowly over millions of years before returning to the galactic disk. It is a grand circulation, a breathing process on a scale almost impossible to comprehend. Galaxies do not simply consume matter. They inhale, they exhale. Over billions of years they breathe. Earlier in our journey, we encountered the galactic fountain. There, powerful explosions from massive stars launched hot gas high above the Milky Way. Now we discover where much of that gas travels. It does not disappear into space. It joins this enormous invisible sea. Over immense stretches of time, gravity gently gathers portions of that gas once again. It cools, it condenses. Eventually, some of it falls back into the galactic disk, where new stars may be born. The death of one generation becomes the beginning of another. Nothing is truly wasted. The universe is remarkably patient with its recycling. Without the circumgalactic medium, the Milky Way would slowly fade. Every generation of stars consumes hydrogen. Every stellar wind pushes material outward. Every supernova scatters heavy elements across space. If nothing returned, the galaxy would eventually run out of the raw ingredients needed to create new suns. But the invisible ocean quietly stores those ingredients. It acts like an enormous reservoir waiting beyond the shoreline of visible space. Without it, our galaxy's future would be much shorter. Perhaps that is one of the universe's gentlest lessons. The things that sustain life are often hidden. Roots beneath a forest, aquifers beneath a desert, memories beneath a smile, and beyond the brilliant stars of the Milky Way, an unseen ocean nourishing generations yet to come. Not everything essential asks to be noticed. Scientists continue studying the circumgalactic medium because it may answer some of astronomy's greatest mysteries. Where are the galaxy's missing baryons, the ordinary matter predicted by cosmology but not easily observed? How do galaxies regulate their own growth? Why do some galaxies stop forming stars while others continue for billions of years? The CGM may hold many of those answers. Like an ancient library with transparent walls, it has preserved the history of countless stellar generations. Every atom drifting through it carries the memory of stars that lived and died long before Earth even existed. It is humbling to realize that our solar system does not float alone. The Sun, Earth, every planet, every comet, every spacecraft humanity has ever launched, all of them travel inside this enormous invisible sea. Even now, as you read these words, our entire solar system moves quietly through the galaxy, surrounded by a halo whose boundaries stretch far beyond anything our ancestors could have imagined. We have always lived inside this ocean. We simply did not know it. If one day you awaken with a quiet curiosity to explore forgotten civilizations, the enduring mysteries of the pyramids, or the deepest regions of the cosmos, you may find a gentle companion called Epoch Echoes. It is less a channel than a small lantern waiting patiently beside the road, ready to accompany you whenever your journey among the stars begins again. Take one final, slow breath. Imagine yourself floating far beyond the Milky Way. Behind you, the spiral galaxy glows like a silver flower blooming in darkness. Around it stretches an ocean without waves, without tides, without shores, a sea so transparent that entire civilizations lived inside it without ever realizing it existed. And perhaps that is why the universe remains endlessly beautiful. Every time we believe we have reached the edge of understanding, another invisible horizon quietly appears. In the next chapter, our voyage will carry us even farther into one of the greatest mysteries in all of modern astronomy, a mysterious halo whose gravity shapes galaxies while remaining completely unseen. We will enter the realm of dark matter. There is a strange truth that humanity failed to recognize for thousands of years. We have always trusted what our eyes could see: mountains, oceans, clouds, the light of the sun, the Milky Way stretching like a silver river across the night sky. All of these have led us to believe that the universe is made of light. But the deeper astronomers looked, the more astonishing a realization emerged. Light tells only a very small part of the story. Now that our journey has carried us beyond ancient globular clusters, silent rivers of stars, the enormous Fermi bubbles, and the vast sea of gas surrounding the Milky Way, it is time to climb one more step on the universe's invisible ladder, a step that leads towards something no one has ever seen. Take a slow, deep breath. Then, as on every night before, let your eyes close halfway there. There's no need to picture everything too clearly, for what we are about to enter cannot be seen at all. If you stood far beyond the Milky Way, so far away that the entire galaxy appeared as nothing, more than a tiny spiral of light suspended in the darkness, you would probably think you had seen everything: the spiral arms, that's the brilliant central bulge, the dark clouds of dust, the young blue star clusters. Everything would seem to form a complete picture. But in truth, you would have seen only about 1/6 of the galaxy's actual mass. Everything else is completely invisible. It emits no light, it reflects no light. It does not absorb light in any way our telescopes can detect, yet it is there quietly embracing the entire Milky Way like a vast, colorless ocean. Astronomers call it the dark matter halo. At first glance, the name brings darkness to mind, but dark here does not mean black. It simply means that this matter does not interact with light. If you hold a stone in your hand, sunlight reflects from its surface into your eyes. If you look at a star, the light it creates travels across space to reach you. If you observe a nebula, its gas and dust absorb and emit light at many different wavelengths, but dark matter does none of these things. Light passes straight through it as though it were not there. That is why, throughout nearly all of human history, we had no idea we were living inside an invisible ocean. The remarkable thing is, humanity discovered dark matter not with our eyes, but through motion. At the beginning of the 20th century, astronomers began measuring how fast galaxies rotate. Common sense suggested that stars farther from a galaxy's center should move more slowly, just as the planets do in our solar system. Mercury orbits very quickly. Neptune moves much more slowly. The reason is simple: the farther an object is from the source of gravity, the weaker the gravitational pull becomes. But the Milky Way refused to behave that way. Stars near the outer edge of the galaxy continue racing along at astonishing speeds, so fast that, if only the visible matter existed, the entire galaxy should have flown apart long ago, and yet it remains intact. An invisible force of gravity is holding everything together, like transparent strings supporting a kite in the sky, strings that cannot be seen by the people standing below it. That was the moment science began to wonder. Perhaps the universe contains far more matter than light reveals. Decades of observations that followed only strengthened that suspicion. Not only the Milky Way, nearly every galaxy appears to be surrounded by an enormous halo of dark matter. And not only galaxies, even clusters of galaxies show the same pattern. Without dark matter, gravity would simply be too weak to keep thousands of galaxies bound. Together over billions of years, you might picture it like an ancient tree. What we see above the ground is the trunk and the branches, but it is the vast root system beneath the soil that keeps the tree standing. Light is the trunk, dark matter is the roots. We admire the canopy, while most of the structure remains hidden beneath invisible ground. If we could see the dark matter halo with our own eyes, the night sky would look completely different. An enormous sphere would surround the Milky Way, not merely hundreds of thousands of light years across, but nearly 1 million light years in diameter. Our sun drifts through only a tiny region within that immense sphere. The entirety of human history, every civilization, every ocean, every mountain, every poem, every laugh has unfolded inside that colossal cocoon of gravity, a cocoon whose existence humanity recognized only in the 20th century. What is even more fascinating is this: we still do not know what dark matter actually is. It is not dust, not gas, not hidden planets, not the remains of dead stars. Careful measurements show that all of those combined still account for far too little mass. There must exist an entirely new form of matter, one that modern physics has yet to explain. Perhaps at this very moment, thousands of scientists around the world are quietly searching for the answer. It is a humbling thought. The more we discover, the more modest our place in the universe becomes. Long ago, humanity believed Earth was the center of everything. Then we learned it is only a planet. Later, we realized the sun is merely an ordinary star. Then we discovered that the Milky Way is just one among hundreds of billions of galaxies. And now, even though stars account for only a small fraction of the universe's true mass, the light we have admired for thousands of years turns out to be nothing more than a thin layer of foam floating on the surface of a vast cosmic ocean. Perhaps the greatest beauty of dark matter lies not in what it is, but in the lesson it teaches. Not everything that matters can be seen. A father's quiet strength, a mother's sacrifice, faith, hope, kindness, love. They are much like dark matter. They do not shine. They are not always visible. Yet they are what keep our lives from falling apart. If one day you wake up wanting to continue exploring the ancient mysteries of the pyramids, the civilizations that disappeared, or the deepest corners of the universe, perhaps you will find a companion called Epoch Echoes. It is more than a storytelling channel. It is like a small lantern, always waiting to welcome you home after every voyage among the stars. Now, look once more toward the Milky Way. The stars still sparkle just as they have for millions of years. But now you know that beyond their light lies an invisible ocean far greater than anything we can see. An ocean that does not need to be seen in order to exist, and perhaps it is that profound silence that has always been the oldest language of the universe. In the next chapter, we will journey even farther from the plane of the Milky Way, traveling toward places that few people ever imagine. Two rare windows opening beyond the galactic disk, where the sky becomes so astonishingly clear that it almost feels as though the universe itself is gazing back at us. This is the journey to the windows of the universe. There is a curious habit shared by almost everyone who has ever looked up at the night sky. We lift our eyes toward the glowing river of the Milky Way. Its countless stars stretch from one horizon to the other, forming a celestial path that has inspired travelers, poets, philosophers, and dreamers for thousands of years. It is beautiful. It is familiar. And because it is so bright, we naturally assume that it is where the universe reveals itself most clearly. But sometimes, the brightest places hide the most. Take a slow breath. Feel your shoulders become lighter. Imagine that our journey is continuing exactly where the last chapter left us. We are no longer drifting through the invisible ocean of the circumgalactic medium. Instead, we begin to rise, not away from the Milky Way, but above it, far above the spiral disk, until the galaxy beneath us slowly transforms into something entirely different. No longer a glowing river, no longer a wide band across the heavens. Now it resembles a magnificent silver wheel floating in darkness, and we are moving toward the top of that wheel, toward one of the quietest directions in the sky, toward the galactic pole. Every spinning world has poles. Earth has a north pole and a south pole. A spinning top has two ends around which it rotates. Even our galaxy, enormous beyond imagination, possesses its own poles. The Milky Way is a rotating disk, nearly 100,000 light-years across. As it turns, an invisible axis passes through its center. At each end of that axis lies a point astronomers call the galactic North Pole and the galactic South Pole. Unlike the poles of Earth, there is no frozen landscape waiting there. No ice, no mountains, no magnetic compass pointing the way. The galactic poles are simply directions, windows, openings through which we look out of the crowded plane of our own galaxy. Most of the stars we see at night belong to the Milky Way. That should not surprise us. After all, we live inside it. Imagine standing deep within a vast forest. Wherever you look, trees surround you. Their trunks overlap, branches weave together overhead. Sunlight filters through countless leaves. It becomes difficult to see beyond the forest itself. Our galaxy is much the same. Looking along the galactic plane is like looking through the densest part of that forest. Billions of stars overlap. Clouds of dust scatter and absorb light. Nebulae glow softly. The view is breathtaking, yet much of the distant universe remains hidden behind this luminous curtain. Now imagine climbing above the tallest tree. Suddenly the forest no longer blocks the horizon. You can finally see distant mountains, wide rivers, faraway skies. That is exactly what happens when astronomers observe near the galactic poles. Instead of peering through the crowded disk of the Milky Way, they look almost straight out into intergalactic space. The dust becomes thinner. The number of foreground stars decreases dramatically. The universe beyond begins to emerge. These quiet regions have become some of the most valuable windows in modern astronomy. Many of humanity's deepest observations have deliberately pointed away from the bright Milky Way. Away from familiar stars, toward seemingly empty patches of darkness near the galactic poles. At first glance, those regions appear almost disappointing. Only a few stars. Little structure, mostly darkness. Yet when telescopes stare there patiently, the darkness changes. Tiny points begin to appear, then hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Each faint point is not a star, it is an entire galaxy, every one containing billions or even trillions of stars. The emptiness was never empty. It was simply too distant for our eyes to recognize. There is something deeply comforting about that realization. Sometimes what appears empty is only waiting for greater patience. The universe often rewards those who are willing to look a little longer. One of the greatest lessons taught by the galactic poles is perspective. For most of human history, the Milky Way felt immense, almost infinite. It dominated the night sky. It defined the heavens. But when we look through these celestial windows, the Milky Way becomes only one luminous island among countless others. Galaxy after galaxy fills the darkness. Some spiral gracefully like our own. Others glow as giant elliptical cities of ancient stars. Some are colliding. Some are still being born. Together, they weave an intricate cosmic tapestry stretching across billions of light years. The universe grows larger with every patient observation. Imagine standing inside a magnificent cathedral. The stained glass windows around you are dazzling. Their colors dance across the stone floor. For a while, you believe the cathedral is the entire world. Then someone quietly opens the door. Outside lies an endless landscape beneath an open sky. The cathedral has not become smaller. Your understanding has simply become larger. The galactic poles are those open doors. Even light itself seems to whisper different stories here. Looking through the crowded galactic plane often means seeing nearby stars. Looking toward the poles allows us to look much farther back in time. Some galaxies visible through these cosmic windows emitted their light long before Earth existed. Others began their journey when the first multicellular life was only beginning to evolve. Some photons entering our telescopes tonight have traveled for billions of years without interruption. Their voyage began before the sun was born. They crossed expanding space, avoided countless galaxies, passed silently through cosmic darkness, only to end their journey inside a human-built telescope on a small blue planet. There is something profoundly beautiful about such patience. The galactic poles remind us that direction matters. Looking in one direction reveals familiarity. Looking in another reveals possibility. The stars have not changed, only our point of view has. Perhaps life is much the same. There are seasons when we stare so long at familiar problems that we forget to lift our eyes. Sometimes the answer is not hidden. It is simply waiting in another direction. If one morning you find yourself longing to continue exploring forgotten civilizations, mysterious pyramids, or the quiet wonders scattered throughout the cosmos, you may discover a familiar companion called Epoch echoes. Like these celestial windows, it is a place that gently encourages us to keep looking beyond what first meets the eye. Now let your breathing slow once more. Imagine yourself drifting above the Milky Way. Beneath you, billions of stars form a luminous wheel, turning with patient grace. Above you, there is almost nothing, or so it seems. You continue looking. Minute after minute, the darkness slowly begins to bloom. A single galaxy appears, then another, then another. Soon the entire universe unfolds like flowers opening beneath the first light of dawn. You realize that darkness was never the absence of beauty. It was simply beauty waiting to be discovered, and our journey is not yet finished. Beyond these windows lies an even greater structure, one so immense that galaxies themselves become tiny threads woven together across the universe. In the next chapter, we will leave individual galaxies behind and begin following those invisible threads into one of the largest structures known to science. We will enter the breathtaking realm of the cosmic web. If you have ever watched a spider weaving its web in the quiet hours before dawn, you may have noticed something extraordinary. From a distance, the silk seems impossibly delicate, almost invisible. A single thread appears too fragile to matter, yet together, thousands of tiny strands become an elegant structure capable of catching the morning dew, holding its shape against the wind, and connecting every corner to every other. The universe, it turns out, has woven something remarkably similar, not from silk, not by a spider, but over billions of years. Using gravity itself as the patient weaver, take a slow, gentle breath. Our journey has now carried us beyond the Milky Way, beyond its invisible halo. Beyond the quiet windows of the galactic poles, we are no longer looking at a single galaxy, nor at a cluster of galaxies. Instead, we begin to rise higher than almost any human imagination has ever traveled. As we climb, individual galaxies become tiny sparks of light. Galaxy clusters shrink into scattered islands. Distance itself begins to lose its meaning. Only then does the larger pattern quietly emerge. At first, you notice a few glowing lines, then intersections, then long, graceful bridges stretching across unimaginable darkness. The farther you drift, the clearer it becomes. The universe is not random. It is not a chaotic scattering of galaxies thrown carelessly into empty space. Instead, galaxies gather along enormous filaments, forming a breathtaking network that spans the observable universe. Astronomers call this immense structure the cosmic web. It is the largest pattern we have ever discovered. Imagine looking down upon Earth at night. Cities glow like tiny islands of light. Roads connect. Therm highways branch outward. Bridges cross rivers. No single street tells you very much, but viewed from high above, an elegant network appears. The cosmic web is something like that. Only instead of cities, there are galaxy clusters. Instead of highways, there are filaments of galaxies and dark matter stretching hundreds of millions of light years. And instead of continents, there are regions so vast that even light requires millions of centuries simply to cross them. The story of this web began almost 14 billion years ago. Shortly after the Big Bang, the universe was astonishingly smooth matter, was distributed almost evenly everywhere, almost tiny. Differences existed. Some regions contained just a little more matter than others. Not much, perhaps only one part in 100,000. Yet gravity is wonderfully patient. Over billions of years, those slightly denser regions attracted more matter. As they grew heavier, they pulled in even more, slowly, almost imperceptibly. The universe began weaving itself thin. Filaments stretched across expanding space. Galaxies formed along these invisible threads. Clusters gathered where multiple filaments met. The grand architecture of the cosmos slowly emerged. Dark matter played the leading role in this silent construction. Long before stars illuminated the universe, dark matter had already begun shaping its invisible framework. Ordinary matter followed. Gas drifted toward these gravitational rivers. Stars ignited. Galaxies blossomed. Light arrived only after the scaffolding had already been built. In a sense, everything beautiful we see today is hanging upon an invisible framework that cannot itself be seen. Imagine building a cathedral before stained glass catches the sunlight. Before bells ring across the countryside, before worshippers enter its halls, workers first erect wooden scaffolding. Most visitors never think about those hidden supports, yet without them, the cathedral could never exist. Dark matter formed the scaffolding. Gravity became the architect. The cosmic web became the cathedral. Galaxies are merely its glowing windows. If our eyes could somehow perceive the entire cosmic web at once, the night sky would become almost unrecognizable. Instead of isolated galaxies floating in darkness, we would see luminous rivers flowing between enormous intersections. Each filament would contain thousands of galaxies. Every crossing would blaze with giant galaxy clusters. Between them would stretch immense regions where almost nothing exists. Dark oceans separating glowing continents. The universe would resemble an intricate neural network, or perhaps the delicate veins inside a living leaf. Nature, it seems, enjoys repeating certain patterns on every scale. Scientists have spent decades mapping this extraordinary structure. Large sky surveys have revealed millions of galaxies, allowing astronomers to trace the faint outlines of these colossal filaments. Computer simulations based on gravity reproduce remarkably similar patterns. Again and again, mathematics predicts what telescopes later observe. It is one of the most satisfying conversations between theory and reality. The universe quietly whispers, and mathematics learns how to listen. Perhaps one of the most astonishing facts is that our own Milky Way is only a single point within this enormous web. Everything humanity has ever accomplished, every poem ever written, every symphony ever composed, every civilization that has risen and fallen, every child who has laughed beneath the stars, of it has unfolded inside one ordinary galaxy, itself resting upon one delicate thread of an unimaginably vast cosmic tapestry. We are smaller than we once believed, yet somehow that realization does not diminish us. It makes existence even more miraculous. There is another lesson hidden inside the cosmic web. Nothing truly exists alone. Every galaxy influences others through gravity. Clusters grow by gathering smaller groups. Matter flows continuously along invisible pathways. Even in the immense silence of space, connection is everywhere. Perhaps isolation has always been an illusion. The universe itself seems to prefer relationships over loneliness. Every thread depends upon countless others. Remove enough connections, and the entire pattern begins to change. Human lives often resemble those invisible filaments. Most of our greatest influences are not dramatic moments. They are quiet conversations, small acts of kindness, patient teachers, loving parents, unexpected friendships, invisible threads stretching across years, rarely noticed while they are being woven. Only much later do we step back and recognize the beautiful pattern they created. If one day you find yourself longing to continue exploring forgotten civilizations, mysterious pyramids, or the deepest wonders of the cosmos, you may once again encounter a gentle companion called Epoch echoes. Like the threads of the cosmic web, each story is quietly connected to the next, inviting curious minds to wander a little farther into the unknown. Now let yourself drift even farther. The galaxies become countless sparks scattered across eternity. The glowing filaments stretch in every direction. There is no center, no edge, only an endless tapestry woven with extraordinary Patience for a moment. You simply float. No destination, no urgency, only quiet wonder. Then, as your eyes continue exploring this magnificent network, you begin noticing something unexpected. Between the brilliant threads, there are enormous regions where almost nothing exists, not stars, not galaxies, almost perfect emptiness. The web is beautiful, not only because of its threads, it is equally defined by the spaces between them, and those silent regions will become the destination of our next journey. In the next chapter, we will leave behind the crowded intersections of galaxies and enter some of the loneliest places known to science, the vast and mysterious cosmic voids. There are places in the universe where almost nothing happens, no brilliant spiral galaxies, no crowded clusters of stars, no glowing nebulae stretching across the darkness, only vast expanses where silence has endured for billions of years. At first they seem empty, forgotten, almost meaningless. Yet sometimes the quietest places reveal the deepest truths. Take a slow breath. Let every thought become lighter. Our journey has carried us across the magnificent filaments of the cosmic web. We have followed rivers of galaxies stretching across unimaginable distances. We have stood at brilliant intersections where thousands of galaxies gather like luminous cities. Now, without warning, we drift away from those glowing pathways. The light begins to fade. The galaxies become fewer. Then fewer still. Until finally, there is almost nothing left. Welcome to a cosmic void. Imagine flying across Earth at night. Below you, cities sparkle with golden lights. Roads connect one community to another. The landscape feels alive. Then the lights disappear. You pass over a vast desert, or perhaps the endless Pacific Ocean. Hours pass. Darkness surrounds you. The silence itself becomes a landscape. Cosmic voids are something like that, only infinitely larger. Instead of hundreds of kilometers, they stretch across hundreds of millions of light years. It is tempting to think of these regions as empty holes in the universe, but they are not holes. They are simply places where gravity gathered less matter during the universe's earliest moments. When the first tiny fluctuations appeared after the Big Bang, some regions began collecting matter more efficiently. Galaxies formed there. Clusters grew. Filaments stretched outward. Meanwhile, neighboring regions slowly lost matter to those growing structures. Over billions of years, they became emptier and emptier, not because something removed the galaxies, but because gravity gently persuaded them to leave. Imagine placing tiny drops of rain upon a smooth window. Each droplet slowly slides toward nearby droplets. Small drops merge into larger ones. Eventually, clear patches appear between them. Nothing pushed the water away. It simply flowed toward regions where more water already existed. The universe behaved in much the same way. Matter drifted toward matter. The empty regions quietly expanded. Silence became part of the cosmic design. Some cosmic voids are astonishingly large. The famous Bhuta's void spans roughly 300 million light-years. If our Milky Way stood near its center, the nearest large galaxy would lie unimaginably far away. The night sky would be transformed. No magnificent Andromeda, no crowded tapestry of distant galaxies. Only a sparse scattering of lonely lights suspended in overwhelming darkness. Civilizations born there might spend countless generations believing they were almost alone. they would not be wrong. Their universe would truly appear far quieter than ours. Even light behaves differently inside these immense voids. Photons travel for millions of years without passing close to another galaxy. Gravity barely bends their paths. The darkness feels almost untouched, like untouched snow stretching across an endless winter plain. Nothing disturbs it. Nothing interrupts its remarkable stillness. And yet, even these seemingly empty regions are not completely empty. A few galaxies drift through them. Thin wisps of gas remain. Dark matter still extends throughout space. Quantum fields continue their silent fluctuations. Space itself continues expanding. Absolute emptiness does not exist. The universe always leaves behind at least a whisper. Perhaps complete nothingness has never truly existed at all. There is something profoundly peaceful about this realization. Human beings often fear emptiness. We fear quiet rooms, empty calendars, long pauses in conversation, moments when nothing appears to be happening. Yet the universe seems entirely comfortable with silence. It allows vast regions to remain almost undisturbed for billions of years. Not because they have been forgotten, but because stillness has its own purpose. The cosmic web would not exist without cosmic voids. The brilliant filaments gain their shape because these immense empty regions surround them. Light becomes meaningful because darkness accompanies it. Music exists because silence separates each note. A painting breathes because empty space surrounds the colors. The universe understands something artists have always known. Absence creates beauty. Perhaps our own lives follow the same quiet principle. We often celebrate the busy years, the exciting adventures, the moments filled with achievement. But looking back, it is often the silent seasons that changed us most deeply. The long walks, the peaceful evenings, the quiet mornings before sunrise. The hours spent simply watching clouds drift across the sky. Growth is not always noisy. Sometimes it arrives without announcing itself. Astronomers continue studying cosmic voids with great interest. Far from being unimportant, these enormous regions help scientists understand how gravity shapes the universe. They provide laboratories where cosmological theories can be tested with extraordinary precision. Even emptiness contains information. Even silence carries a message. The universe wastes nothing, not even its quiet places. Imagine floating near the center of one of these immense voids. There is no up, no down, only darkness stretching farther than language can comfortably describe. You turn slowly. A faint galaxy glows in one direction. Another lies impossibly far away. Between them, nothing but ancient space. At first, such loneliness may seem frightening. Then, after a while, something changes. The silence no longer feels empty. It begins to feel spacious, gentle, almost welcoming. You realize that the universe is not asking you to fear the quiet. It is inviting you to rest within it. If one day you wish to continue exploring forgotten civilizations, mysterious pyramids, or the hidden wonders scattered across the cosmos, you may once again find a quiet companion called Epoch echoes. Like these vast cosmic voids, it reminds us that wonder often grows in moments of stillness rather than noise. Take one final deep breath. Imagine the entire cosmic web suspended before you. Brilliant rivers of galaxies weave across eternity. Between them stretch enormous oceans of darkness. Neither could exist without the other. Together they form the universe we know, light and silence, presence and absence, matter and emptiness, each giving meaning to the other. As our journey through the largest structures in the cosmos slowly comes to an end, we are about to return to something much closer to home. Not because it is less extraordinary, but because after wandering across billions of light years, we are finally ready to see our own star with new eyes. The next chapter will not begin among distant galaxies. It will begin inside the sun itself. There, hidden beneath its glowing surface, an endless symphony has been playing for billions of years, a rhythm too slow for human ears, yet powerful enough to reveal the star's deepest secrets. Welcome to Solar Oscillations. When we think of music, we imagine sound, a violin singing through the quiet air, rain tapping gently against a window, the distant rhythm of waves meeting the shore. Music, we believe, belongs to ears, yet long before the first human ever listened to the wind, long before birds filled the forests with song, the universe had already begun composing its own symphonies, not with strings, not with voices, but with stars. And among those countless performers, one has been quietly singing for more than 4.5 billion years. Our sun, take a slow breath, after wandering across the largest structures in existence, across invisible oceans, dark matter halos, galactic poles, the immense cosmic web, and the silent voids between its glowing threads. We finally return home. At first, it may feel like a small journey backward. The sun is, after all, only one ordinary star among hundreds of billions inside the Milky Way. Yet sometimes, after traveling unimaginably far, we discover that the greatest mysteries have been waiting quietly in the place we began. Look at the sun in your imagination, not with your eyes. Its brilliance would be far too overwhelming. Instead, picture it as a glowing sphere suspended in perfect darkness, golden, steady, almost peaceful. From Earth, it appears calm. Its light rises every morning with reassuring consistency. Its warmth nurtures forests, oceans, and every living creature. It feels dependable, unchanging, but beneath that serene appearance, the sun is alive with motion every second. Its entire body trembles, not violently, not chaotically, but rhythmically. The sun expands and contracts in countless tiny patterns. Its surface rises, then falls, again and again, millions of times. These gentle vibrations are called solar oscillations. To the human eye, they are invisible. To sensitive scientific instruments, they reveal an astonishing truth. The sun is constantly ringing like an enormous bell. Imagine striking a crystal glass with your fingertip. A clear tone fills the room. The glass vibrates. Although the movement is tiny, the sound carries beautifully through the air. Now replace that. Fragile glass with a sphere 109 times wider than Earth. Replace crystal with blazing plasma. Replace seconds with cycles lasting several minutes. You begin to glimpse the extraordinary scale of the sun's hidden music. These oscillations are not random. They are pressure waves. Immense pulses generated deep within the solar interior. Hot plasma rises. Cooler plasma sinks. Energy pushes outward from the core. Gravity pulls everything back inward. The result is an endless conversation between pressure and gravity, a conversation that has continued almost uninterrupted for billions of years. If our ears could somehow survive near the sun, would we hear this music? Surprisingly, no, space itself is almost a perfect vacuum. Sound requires matter through which to travel. Without air, there is silence. The vibrations remain trapped inside the sun. Only careful measurements of its surface allow scientists to reconstruct the hidden symphony playing beneath. In a way, astronomers have learned to listen with their eyes. This remarkable field of study is known as helioseismology. Just as earthquakes allow geologists to study Earth's interior, solar vibrations allow astronomers to peer inside the sun. No spacecraft can journey into its core. The temperatures are simply too extreme. Instead, scientists study the rhythms appearing across its glowing surface. Every oscillation carries information. Every pulse tells a story. The sun has been quietly revealing its inner structure all along. We simply had to learn its language. Through these gentle vibrations, humanity has measured the depth of the sun's convection zone. We have traced the movement of plasma beneath its surface. We have discovered that different latitudes rotate at different speeds. Even subtle changes inside the solar interior leave delicate fingerprints upon these oscillations. It is rather like hearing a pianist in another room. Though you cannot see the instrument, every note tells you something about the hands playing it. The more we study the sun, the more alive it becomes. It is no longer merely a giant ball of fire. It breathes, it circulates, it vibrates, it changes, it ages. Like every living story in the universe, it exists not as a frozen object, but as an ongoing process. Perhaps permanence has always been an illusion. Everything is movement, even stars. There is something deeply comforting about that thought. Many of us spend our lives searching for stability, for certainty, for things that never change. Yet the universe suggests another possibility. Perhaps true stability is not the absence of motion. Perhaps it is the harmony of countless movements working together. The sun survives not because it is perfectly still. It survives because every force continuously balances another. Expansion meets gravity. Heat meets pressure. Motion creates equilibrium. The greatest strength often comes from balance rather than rigidity. Our own hearts understand this principle. A heartbeat is not silence, it is rhythm. Breathing is not stillness, it is motion. Even while sleeping, our bodies remain wonderfully active. Life itself is an orchestra of countless oscillations. Perhaps that is why the sun feels strangely familiar. Its rhythms echo something already living inside us. Imagine standing on Earth at sunrise. Warm, golden light spreads gently across the landscape. Birds awaken, leaves shimmer with dew. Children begin another day. Nothing in that peaceful morning hints that the star above is vibrating with millions of overlapping waves. Its hidden music reaches us not as sound, but as life itself, every tree growing toward the sky. Every flower opening its petals, every ocean current, every breath you have ever taken, all of them are quiet verses in the sun's ancient symphony. If one morning you feel drawn to continue exploring forgotten civilizations, mysterious pyramids, or the quiet wonders hidden throughout the universe, you may once again find a familiar companion called Epoch echoes. Like the sun's invisible music, some stories reveal their deepest beauty only to those willing to listen patiently. Now close your eyes for a moment. Imagine floating just beyond the glowing surface of the sun. The brilliant plasma rises beneath you like a golden sea. Invisible waves ripple endlessly through the star. No ears can hear them, Yet the entire sun sings, not for applause, not for an audience, simply because that is what stars have always done. And perhaps so have we. Every heartbeat, every breath, every quiet hope carried through another day. Each is a small vibration in the greater music of existence. In our next chapter, we will discover something even more astonishing. The earth beneath your feet is not standing still. The sun itself is not standing still. Together, they are moving through the galaxy in ways that most people never imagine. The journey home is not over. It has been in motion all along. Welcome to You Have Always Been Moving. There is a comforting illusion we all share when we stand beneath an old tree, when we watch the evening sky, when we lie quietly in bed before sleep. It feels as though we are perfectly still. The floor beneath our feet seems solid. The mountains appear immovable. The stars seem fixed in their familiar places. Everything whispers the same reassuring message. You are standing still, but the universe has been smiling gently at that belief for billions of years because you have never been still, not for a single second. Take one slow breath. Feel the quiet rhythm of your heart. The chair beneath you feels motionless. The room around you seems unchanged. Outside the window, perhaps the trees barely sway. Nothing suggests movement, yet while you read these words, you are traveling faster than any aircraft ever built. Not because you chose to, simply because you are part of something much larger. Our journey began on Earth. We looked upward and wondered what lay beyond the night sky. Since then, we have crossed the moon, wandered through the solar system, climbed into the spiral arms of the Milky Way, explored invisible oceans of gas, followed runaway stars, crossed the cosmic web, and drifted through the quietest regions of existence. Now we return home, only to discover that home has never stopped moving. The first motion is the one we know best. The Earth spins. Every 24 hours, our planet completes one graceful rotation. At the equator, that rotation carries us at nearly 1,700 kilometers every hour. Even now, unless you happen to be standing exactly at one of Earth's poles, you're being carried around the planet at astonishing speed. Yet you feel nothing. Motion by itself is silent. The second journey is even greater. The Earth circles the Sun once each year. To remain in orbit, our planet travels at almost 30 kilometers every second. That is more than 100,000 kilometers every hour. During the time it takes you to blink, Earth has already moved dozens of kilometers through space. The seasons quietly unfold. The sunrise feels familiar, and all the while our planet races onward without the slightest vibration beneath our feet. But even that is only the beginning. The sun itself is traveling. Our star is not resting peacefully inside the Milky Way. It orbits the galactic center at roughly 220 kilometers every second. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid, every comet, every spacecraft humanity has ever launched, all are accompanying the sun on this magnificent galactic voyage. The solar system is less like a stationary neighborhood and more like a great ship sailing through a cosmic ocean. Imagine sitting inside a smooth, quiet train. The ride is so gentle that your cup of tea remains perfectly still. You read a book, you glance out the window. Nothing inside the carriage suggests extraordinary speed, yet outside, the landscape races past. That is our experience of the universe. Because everything around us shares the same motion, we mistake movement for stillness. The journey becomes even more astonishing. The Milky Way itself is moving. Our galaxy drifts through the local group alongside Andromeda and dozens of smaller galaxies. Together they fall toward larger structures under the influence of gravity. Beyond that, galaxy clusters move, superclusters move. Even the expansion of the universe carries distant galaxies farther apart with the passing of time. Motion exists at every scale. There is no perfectly stationary place in the cosmos. Perhaps that is why astronomers often hesitate to answer a surprisingly simple question. Where are we? The answer depends entirely on what we choose as our reference point, relative to your chair. You are sitting still. Relative to Earth's rotation, you are spinning. Relative to the Sun, you are orbiting. Relative to the galactic center, you are racing through the Milky Way. Relative to distant galaxies, you are traveling in ways almost impossible to imagine. Every answer is correct. Perspective changes everything. Sometimes people ask, if the Earth is moving so quickly, why don't we feel it? The answer is beautifully simple. Because we are moving together. The atmosphere moves with us. The oceans move with us. The mountains move with us. Your heartbeat moves with you. Acceleration is what we notice. Steady motion quietly disappears into the background of experience, just as passengers asleep aboard a smoothly sailing ship do not notice the ocean beneath. Then humanity journeys through the cosmos without feeling the voyage. There is something deeply reassuring about this. Our ancestors feared that wandering meant uncertainty. To travel was to leave the safety of home. Yet the universe gently reminds us that home itself is a traveler. Earth has never remained in one place. Neither has the Sun. The galaxy itself has never stopped wandering. Perhaps movement is not the opposite of belonging. Perhaps movement is belonging. Every sunrise arrives from a different location in space than the sunrise before it. Every birthday finds Earth billions of kilometers farther along its path. Every generation of humanity has lived beneath entirely new stars, even though the familiar constellations seemed unchanged. The universe quietly renews itself every moment. We simply experience that renewal too gradually to notice. Imagine tracing your entire life through space. Your first breath, your first steps, your first day at school, your happiest memory. Every moment forms a graceful spiral as Earth spins, orbits the Sun, and follows our star around the Milky Way. Your life is not a single point. It is a beautiful ribbon woven through space-time. No one has ever stood in exactly the same place twice, not even for a single heartbeat. Perhaps this is one of the universe's most comforting lessons. There are moments when life feels uncertain, when the future seems hidden, when we wish everything would stop changing. Yet the stars remind us that change has always been the natural rhythm of existence. The Earth never pauses. The Sun never pauses. The galaxy never pauses. Still, forests continue growing. Children continue laughing. Birds continue singing at dawn. Movement has never prevented beauty. It has always carried beauty forward. If one quiet evening you find yourself wishing to continue exploring forgotten civilizations, mysterious pyramids, or the endless wonders hidden throughout the universe, you may once again discover a familiar companion called Epoch Echoes. Like the journey of our own planet, every story there reminds us that even when life feels still, We are always traveling toward new horizons. Now close your eyes. Imagine yourself floating high above the solar system. The planets circle the sun in silent harmony. The sun glides through the Milky Way like a golden lantern carried across a vast dark sea. The Milky Way itself drifts among countless neighboring galaxies. Everything is moving. Everything belongs. Everything is connected. And suddenly, the universe no longer feels like an empty place through which we travel. It feels like a magnificent voyage that has been carrying us since the moment we were born, perhaps even longer. In our next chapter, we will leave behind measurements, distances, and directions altogether. After traveling across the observable universe, we will ask one final question. If everything is always moving, if every direction depends on where we stand, then is there truly such a thing as up or down, or have those ideas always belonged only to us? Welcome to the philosophical heart of our journey. There is no up or down. Since the day we learned to stand on 2 feet, we have believed in 2 simple directions, up and down. We point toward the sky and call it above. We point toward the ground and call it below. The words feel so natural that we rarely question them. Children learn them before they learn to read. Birds fly upward, rain falls downward, the sun rises, the leaves drift gently toward the earth. Everything around us seems to agree. Surely the universe must know which way is up. Take one slow breath. Our journey has carried us farther than our ancestors could ever have imagined. We have crossed the moon, traveled beyond the planets, walked among the spiral arms of the Milky Way, floated through invisible oceans surrounding galaxies, followed the threads of the cosmic web, rested in the immense silence of cosmic voids, returned home to listen to the hidden music inside the sun, and finally discovered that Earth itself has never stopped moving. Now, before our voyage comes to its quiet conclusion, the universe offers us one final surprise. There is no universal up, and there is no universal down. Stand outside on a clear evening, stretch one hand toward the stars, place the other upon the ground. It feels obvious which direction each hand points. Gravity gently pulls you toward Earth's center. Everything else seems to lie above. But imagine someone standing on the opposite side of our planet. For them, your up points toward their down. Their feet rest firmly upon the same Earth. Their sky stretches in the opposite direction. Neither of you is wrong. Each simply measures direction from where they stand. Now imagine leaving Earth altogether. You drift quietly beyond the atmosphere. The blue planet slowly shrinks beneath you. Soon there is no ground, no horizon, no falling, no rising. Turn your body once. Nothing changes. Turn again. The stars remain exactly where they were, only your perspective has rotated. The universe offers no preferred orientation. It never has. Astronauts quickly discover this remarkable truth. Inside a spacecraft, there is no floor. No ceiling. One astronaut may attach a laptop to what they call the wall. Another floats upside down while reading. A third eats dinner facing an entirely different direction. No one is actually upside down. The words lose their meaning. Only convenience remains. Imagine releasing a tiny droplet of water inside that spacecraft. It does not fall, it simply floats. A feather behaves the same way. A wrench, a pencil, even a human body. Without a dominant gravitational direction, the universe quietly forgets the distinction between above and below. Perhaps those ideas belonged only to planets all along. The farther we travel into space, the stranger our familiar language becomes. Where is the top of the Milky Way? Where is the bottom? Astronomers sometimes speak of the galactic North Pole and the galactic South Pole. But these are not true directions in the absolute sense. They are simply convenient labels chosen by human beings. Another civilization elsewhere in the universe could define their own orientation differently. Neither would be more correct. The cosmos has no built-in compass. This realization reaches even deeper. If there is no universal up or down, then where is the center? For centuries, people imagined that Earth occupied the middle of creation. Later, we placed the Sun at the center of the solar system. Then we searched for the center of the galaxy. Eventually, we discovered that the observable universe itself has no special center from which everything expands. Every galaxy sees every other distant galaxy moving away. Expansion happens everywhere at once, like raisins drifting apart inside, rising bread dough. Every point experiences the same unfolding. The universe refuses to grant any location absolute importance. At first, this idea can feel unsettling. If there is no center, no top, no bottom, where do we belong? The answer, perhaps, is more beautiful than any ancient map ever imagined. We belong exactly where we are, not because this place is the center of everything, but because every place is a perfectly valid place from which to experience the universe. Every observer becomes the center of their own horizon. Every life becomes a unique window through which existence observes itself. There is something wonderfully freeing about that thought. How much of human life has been spent trying to stand above others, to climb higher, to reach the top, to avoid falling below. Yet the universe quietly smiles. Above and below are local ideas, temporary ideas, useful on a mountain, meaningless among the stars. Perhaps greatness has never depended upon altitude. Perhaps it has always depended upon perspective. Imagine two children lying on opposite sides of Earth, both looking toward the night sky. Neither sees the same stars overhead. Neither points in the same direction, yet both are gazing into the same universe. Their journeys begin differently. Their horizons differ completely. Still, they share one home, one planet, one cosmos. The universe does not ask them to agree on direction, only to remain curious. As our voyage has unfolded, a quiet pattern has appeared again and again. The brightest stars were only part of the story. Invisible matter-shaped galaxies, invisible oceans fed future generations of stars. Invisible threads connected the largest structures in existence. Invisible motion carried Earth through space. Now even invisible assumptions quietly disappear. Perhaps wisdom has never been about collecting answers. Perhaps it is learning which questions deserve to remain open. If one quiet evening you wish to continue exploring forgotten civilizations, mysterious pyramids, or the silent wonders scattered throughout the universe, you may once again find a familiar companion called Epoch Echoes. Every journey there begins with curiosity and ends, not with certainty, but with a deeper appreciation for mystery. Now close your eyes. Imagine floating gently between the galaxies. No floor beneath you, no ceiling above, only endless space. The stars surround you in every direction. Light arrives from all sides with equal patience. You slowly realize that the universe is not asking you to find the highest place. It is inviting you to discover that every direction can become home. There is no throne waiting at the top of creation. No forgotten corner at the bottom. Only an endless ocean of existence welcoming every traveler equally. And perhaps that is the most peaceful truth our journey has uncovered. For billions of years, the universe has never cared whether we were above or below. It has simply carried us gently and faithfully through the stars. In our final chapter, we will allow this extraordinary voyage to come to rest, not with an ending, but with a gentle return, a return to the quiet light of the Milky Way, a return to sleep beneath the same stars that began our journey. Welcome to our final destination, sleeping beneath the light of the Milky Way. Every journey, no matter how extraordinary, eventually finds its way home. Not because the road has ended, but because the traveler has changed. When we first began this quiet voyage together, we simply looked up at the night sky. The Milky Way stretched gently above us like a river of scattered light. It felt beautiful, mysterious, almost impossibly distant. We wondered what might exist beyond that luminous band. Now, after wandering across the vast architecture of the cosmos, the same sky feels different, not because the stars have changed, but because we have. Take one final slow breath. There is nowhere left to hurry. No distant galaxy waiting to be reached. No hidden mystery demanding an answer. Only this quiet moment. Only your breathing. Only the patient light that has crossed unimaginable distances, simply to arrive here. Do you remember how our journey began? We stood beneath the familiar sky, believing the Milky Way was the ceiling above our world. Then we climbed beyond the Earth, past the Moon, past the planets, through the thin disk where young stars are born, across the older stars of the thick disk, into the ancient halo surrounding our galaxy. We wandered among globular clusters older than Earth itself. We watched small galaxies dance around the Milky Way like quiet companions. We followed rivers of stars left behind by forgotten collisions. We rose above the galactic center, where enormous bubbles silently expanded into space. We crossed invisible oceans of gas. We followed stars that had escaped forever from their galactic home. We stood inside an invisible halo of dark matter. We looked outward through the quiet windows of the galactic poles. We saw galaxies woven together into the immense cosmic web. We rested within the profound silence of cosmic voids. We listened to the hidden music playing inside our sun. We discovered that Earth has never stopped traveling. And finally, we learned that the universe has neither an absolute up nor an absolute down. Every chapter gently dissolved another illusion, yet every illusion left behind something even more beautiful. Wonder. Perhaps that has always been the quiet purpose of astronomy, not simply to measure stars, not merely to calculate distances, but to gently remind us how astonishing it is that anything exists at all. A universe capable of producing galaxies, galaxies capable of producing stars, stars capable of creating the elements of life, worlds capable of holding oceans, oceans capable of reflecting moonlight, and somewhere upon one small blue world, a pair of curious eyes looking upward. The atoms within your body have traveled far longer than you have. The carbon in your cells was forged inside ancient stars, that died billions of years before the Earth existed. The oxygen you breathe was created within stellar furnaces. The calcium inside your bones was born during catastrophic supernova explosions. Even the iron carried through your blood was once part of a dying giant star. Long before you had a name, long before humanity existed, the universe had already begun writing the first pages of your story. Perhaps we have never been visitors in the cosmos. Perhaps we have always been one of its many ways of becoming aware of itself. There is a comforting humility in that thought. We often worry about how small we are, compared with galaxies, compared with billions of years, compared with the observable universe. Our lives seem impossibly brief, yet significance has never depended upon size. A single candle cannot illuminate an entire city. Still, it completely transforms the darkness immediately around it. One act of kindness, one quiet conversation, one moment of forgiveness, one shared smile. None changes the whole universe, yet each changes a universe for someone. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps it always has been. The stars have taught us something else. Patience. Nothing in the cosmos happens quickly. Galaxies grow over billions of years. Stars spend millions of years preparing to shine. Planets slowly cool. Mountains quietly rise and wear away. Even light accepts astonishingly long journeys without complaint. The universe never rushes, and somehow, it never arrives too late. Perhaps we too are allowed to unfold at our own pace. There will still be mysteries tomorrow. Scientists will continue searching for the nature of dark matter. New telescopes will reveal galaxies no human has ever seen. Children not yet born will ask questions no one alive today has imagined. The universe will continue surprising us. That is its quiet promise. Wonder is renewable. Curiosity has no final destination. If one day your path once again leads you toward forgotten civilizations, the enduring mysteries of ancient pyramids, or the silent beauty hidden among the stars, perhaps you will find an old companion waiting for you. Epoch echoes, not as a place that claims to have every answer, but as a quiet lantern beside the road, welcoming every curious traveler who wishes to continue exploring the unknown. Now, the night has grown peaceful. Imagine yourself lying beneath a clear sky. The Milky Way stretches gently overhead, exactly as it did on the evening we first began this journey. Nothing about the stars appears different, yet somehow everything feels transformed. You no longer see only points of light. You remember stellar nurseries hidden within glowing clouds, ancient globular clusters circling silently in the halo, invisible rivers of gas surrounding the galaxy, dark matter shaping what cannot be seen, runaway stars racing into intergalactic darkness, invisible threads binding galaxies together across billions of light years. Silent voids where space itself seems to dream, the quiet heartbeat of our sun, the endless motion carrying Earth through the cosmos, a universe without an absolute center, without an absolute up or down, only endless perspective, only endless discovery. You close your eyes, not because the universe has disappeared, but because you now know it will still be there tomorrow. The stars ask nothing from you. They do not demand that you understand them. They simply continue shining with quiet patience. Perhaps that is why they have comforted humanity for thousands of generations, not by answering every question, but by reminding us that mystery itself can be peaceful. Somewhere, A child is seeing the Milky Way for the very first time. Somewhere else an astronomer is patiently waiting for light that began its journey billions of years ago. A spacecraft continues drifting farther from home. A distant star quietly finishes another pulse of its hidden symphony. A galaxy slowly turns, a cluster gently gathers. The cosmic web stretches silently across eternity. Nothing pauses, nothing hurries. Everything belongs, and so our journey ends where it began, beneath the same sky, under the same ancient stars. Only now the darkness feels warmer, the silence feels kinder. The universe feels less like a place beyond us and more like the oldest home we have ever known. Sleep peacefully tonight. The Earth will continue its graceful journey around the Sun. The Sun will continue its voyage through the Milky Way. The Milky Way will continue drifting among countless galaxies, and somewhere within that magnificent motion, you will be traveling too, quietly, safely, beautifully, as you always have. Good night, and thank you for sharing this journey among the stars.